Under an obsidian sky, the stars of truth shine brighter than they ever could during the day. Join our nighttime journey through the mysteries of the soul and the secrets of the universe. Subscribe today and let the darkness reveal the light you've been searching for.
He was standing at my mother's hospital bed, holding her hand, when I walked in. He looked up at me with those hollow eyes and said, "She's asking for you." That was a lie. Nan hadn't asked for anyone in 3 days. She was on a ventilator. What my brother didn't tell me, what I only found out later, was that 48 hours before that moment, he had already met with her estate attorney, alone, without telling me she'd even had an appointment. Let me back up. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm the daughter who stayed. When our father died 8 years ago and left Nan with a house she couldn't afford to heat, and a grief she couldn't afford to carry alone, I was the one who moved back. I was 26. I had a job offer in Portland that I turned down. I had a relationship that quietly fell apart because, as my boyfriend at the time put it, "You're not really available, are you?" I was available. To Nan, I drove her to chemotherapy. I reorganized her medications every Sunday night into those little plastic compartments. I was there for the 2 a.m. calls when she couldn't sleep and needed someone to talk to about Dad. My brother wasn't. He lived 40 minutes away. 40 minutes, not across the country, not overseas. 40 minutes, and he came by maybe 6 times a year: Thanksgiving, Christmas, her birthday if he remembered. He always had reasons. Work was demanding. The kids had soccer. His wife didn't like the drive. I'm not saying I resented him for it. That's not entirely true. I'm saying I accepted it. I accepted the arrangement the way you accept the weather. You don't like it, but you stop expecting it to be different. What I did not accept, and could not have predicted, was what he was capable of when money entered the picture. Nan was diagnosed with a recurrence of her cancer in February. It had been in remission for 4 years. When it came back differently, faster, more aggressive, less interested in responding to treatment. The oncologist sat with us in a small room with bad lighting and told us that we were looking at months, not years. Nan took that information the way she took most hard things, quietly, with her hands folded in her lap, and then she asked if she could have a glass of water. On the drive home she said, "I need to get my affairs in order." I told her we had time. She told me not to be sentimental. She was right. We updated her will within the month. The house would go to both of us equally. Her savings, not a fortune, but not nothing. My father had been careful with money, would be split the same way. There was a life insurance policy, an older one, with a modest payout. She named me as the primary beneficiary on that, because I was the one who had been handling her finances for years. My brother was the secondary. It was her decision. She explained it to him herself, on the phone, and he said he understood. That was March. By June, Nan was in the hospital. She had declined faster than anyone expected. 1 week she was still walking onto the mailbox. 3 weeks later she was on oxygen. I practically lived at that hospital. I knew the nurses by name. I knew which vending machine on the 3rd floor actually worked. I brought Nan her favorite mint tea in a thermos every morning, because the hospital tea tasted like disappointment, her words. My brother came twice in the first 2 weeks, then once. Then he started calling instead of coming, and the calls got shorter. I didn't think much of it. I was too tired to think much of anything. The first sign that something was wrong came from an unlikely place. Nan's estate attorney, a quiet, methodical woman who had handled my family's legal matters for 15 years, called me on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in the hospital parking garage. "I want to make sure you're aware," she said carefully, "that your brother came in last week to discuss your mother's estate." I stood between 2 parked cars and felt something cold move through me. That had nothing to do with the temperature. "By himself?" I asked. "Yes." "Did he bring documentation? Power of attorney, anything like that?" A pause. "That's actually part of why I'm calling you." She told me that my brother had come in claiming that Nan had given him verbal authorization to discuss changes to her will. He wanted to know if it was possible to redirect the life insurance beneficiary designation. He wanted to know about the process for updating estate documents when a patient was incapacitated. He had been, she said, very calm, very thorough. He had asked good questions. She had not made any changes. But she had found the visit concerning enough to make a note, and concerning enough to call me. I sat in my car for a long time after that call. Here is the thing about being the person who handles everything. You start to believe that you can handle everything. I had handled Nan's illness. I had handled my father's death before that. I was capable and organized, and I did not panic easily. But sitting in that parking garage, I felt something I can only describe as the ground shifting under me. Because it wasn't just about money. It was about the fact that my brother had looked at our dying mother and seen a transaction, and then he had driven 40 minutes to try to make that transaction happen before she was gone. I didn't call him. Not yet. I called my own attorney first. A woman I had used twice before. Once for a lease dispute, and once when a former employer owed me back pay. I told her what had happened. She told me to document everything. She told me to make sure the hospital had me listed clearly as Nan's healthcare proxy, which I already was. She told me to contact the insurance company directly and place a note on the policy flagging any attempted changes. I did all of it that afternoon. Then I went back upstairs and sat with Nan. She was having a better day, more alert, her eyes brighter. She asked me about the hydrangeas in her yard, whether they had bloomed yet. I told her yes, the blue ones near the fence, the ones she had planted the year I was born. She smiled and closed her eyes, and I held her hand, and I didn't say a word about any of it. She didn't need to carry that, I would carry it. My brother showed up that Friday. He came in the way he always came in, filling the doorway, loud voice dropping to a performative hush at the last second, bringing coffee for himself and nothing for anyone else. He kissed Nan on the forehead. He asked her how she was feeling. He stayed for 45 minutes before he left. He found me in the hallway. "We should talk about the practical stuff," he said, "while there's still time to sort things out." I looked at him. "What practical stuff? The house, the accounts, who's handling what afterward?" "I'm handling it," I said. "I've always been handling it. The attorney has everything documented." Something moved across his... It was fast. He covered it quickly, but I had grown up with that face. I knew its tells. "Right," he said. "Of course." He left. He didn't come back for 11 days. Nan died on a Thursday morning in July. It was early, not yet 6. And the light coming through the hospital window was that thin gray gold color that only exists at that hour. I was there. I had been there all night. The nurses had been kind. One of them brought me a blanket around 2 in the morning without me asking. I called my brother from the parking lot. He said he was sorry. He said he would be there soon. He cried. And I believed the crying was real. I want to be fair about that. Whatever else was happening, she was his mother too. The grief was real. What happened 4 days later was not grief. He called me that Monday and told me he had spoken to the insurance company. I kept my voice neutral. About what? About the policy. They told me there was a flag on it, some kind of notation. His voice had shifted. Still calm, but with something underneath it now, something pressurized. "Did you do that?" "I did," I said. Silence. "Why would you do that?" And here is the moment I had been preparing for it. Without fully knowing I was in my car. I had rehearsed it in the hospital shower at 3 in the morning. I had lived with it for weeks. "Because your attorney visit concerned me," I said. "Because you went to talk about changes to her estate while she was incapacitated. Without telling me. Without any documentation authorizing you to do so. Because you asked about redirecting her beneficiary designations." Another silence, longer this time. "That's not, I was just asking questions, getting information. For what purpose?" He didn't answer that. "The will stands as written," I said. "The insurance policy stands as written. If you believe you're entitled to something different, you're welcome to discuss it with your attorney, and mine can respond." He hung up. I sat in Nan's kitchen. I had been staying there, going through her things slowly the way she would have wanted, carefully. And I looked at the hydrangeas through the window. They were still blooming, blue and full and unbothered. What came next, I did not see coming, and I want to be honest about that. I had secured the accounts. I had flagged the insurance. I had done everything my attorney told me to do. I thought it was over. It was not over. 6 days after that phone call, I received a certified letter. My brother, through a lawyer I had never heard of, was contesting the will, his argument. And I had to read it twice to believe what I was reading, was that Nan had been unduly influenced by me in the months before her death. That her decision to name me as primary beneficiary on the insurance policy reflected not her own wishes, but my manipulation of a vulnerable person. I want you to understand what that accusation meant to me. I had given up years of my life. I had turned down opportunities, relationships, versions of myself I might have been. I had held her hand at 2 a.m. I had washed her hair when she couldn't lift her arms high enough to do it herself. I had been there for every single appointment, every single phone call, every single hard conversation about what came next, and he was calling that manipulation. I cried for about 20 minutes. Then I stopped, because Nan would have told me not to waste the energy. Then I called my attorney. She had seen this before. That was both comforting and nauseating. She walked me through what a will contest actually required to succeed. "The legal bar is high," she said. "You can't simply claim influence. You have to demonstrate it, and courts look at the totality of circumstances, including who was actually present and engaged in the person's care." "Do you have documentation of your role as caregiver?" she asked. I almost laughed. I had 5 years of pharmacy receipts. I had a folder of every medical appointment going back to her original diagnosis. I had emails with her oncologist, her cardiologist, her GP. I had records of every wire transfer I'd made on her behalf, every bill I'd paid, every insurance claim I'd filed. I had the signed healthcare proxy. I had the attorney's own notes from when we updated the will. Notes that reflected Nan's clear and independent decision-making. "Yes," I said. "I have documentation." What we also had, and this was the piece my brother had not accounted for, was the estate attorney's record of his solo visit, her notes, her concern. her call to me. She was willing to testify about what he had asked and what he had been looking for, and that no changes had been authorized because she had found his requests irregular. His attorney, apparently, had not known about that visit when they filed the contest. Or they had known and miscalculated. The contest was withdrawn 14 weeks later. No settlement, no negotiation. Just a letter stating that the matter was being dropped. I found out on a Wednesday. I was sitting in Nan's garden. My garden now, I supposed. Though it didn't feel that way yet. And my attorney called and read me the relevant sentence. And I said thank you and hung up and just sat there for a while. The hydrangeas were past their peak by then. A little tired looking. The edges going brown. But still there. I have not spoken to my brother since the letter withdrawing the contest arrived. I've thought about what I would say if I did. I've turned it over in the quiet hours, the way you turn a stone over looking for something. Mostly what I come back to is this. I don't think he saw himself as a villain. I think he looked at a situation where our mother was dying, and there was money involved, and he told himself a story about fairness that conveniently left out everything he hadn't done. People who take are often very good at convincing themselves they deserve. What I know is this. I did not do anything wrong. I was there. I stayed. I made her mint tea in a thermos every single morning, because the hospital tea was terrible and she deserved better. I sat with her in the thin gray gold light and held her hand, and that was not manipulation. That was love. Those are different things. Even when someone is desperate enough to confuse them. If you are watching this and you have someone in your life who would do what he did, who would look at grief and see opportunity, who would look at your years of showing up and call it suspicious, I want to say something to you directly. Document everything. Not because you're planning for betrayal, but because the people who take are counting on you not to. They are counting on your decency, your assumption that family means something, your reluctance to believe the worst. Do not give them that advantage. And if you are sitting somewhere right now, carrying the weight of a person who needs you, who takes more than they give, who has made you smaller and more tired than you were before, you are allowed to put it down. You are allowed to stop setting yourself on fire. She used to say that. Nan, don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. She said it to me about a relationship I stayed in too long, years ago. I didn't understand it then, the way I understand it now. I am her daughter, I always will be, and I am still here.